Ow.
And this is called Fancy Nancy and the
Bella.
Posh Puppy.
Okay.
I'm a posh puppy.
Right, so this is
We're
Fancy
gonna get a
Nancy.
real puppy.
It says,
A real one.
I am ecstatic, and that's a fancy word for happy. We're going to get a puppy. A real one, Fancy Nancy says, right? And look what Fancy Nancy's doing. She's drawing her little Fancy Nancy picture on her little sister's face, so her sister looks like a puppy.
Ooh.
And there, I hope we get a papillon, like our neighbor's dog. You say it like a papillon. And in French, that means butterfly.
No, it says, this is how it goes. I do.
Oh, okay. And there's Fancy Nancy skipping along, and we're gonna find out about Mrs. Divine, who's so fancy, and that's her little dog.
There's decorations.
Ooh, that's so.
I help Mrs. Divine take care of Jewel. That's her little puppy.
I wish you would.
We take her to the beauty salon, and we buy her new ensembles. And that's a fancy word for clothes. Papillons are so posh, and that's a fancy word for fancy. See, there's Mrs. Divine, look, there's the dog Jewel, and look, Fancy Nancy, all dressed up like fancy clothes. There's only one problem.
My parents.
My parents.
They don't want a fancy dog.
No, that's right. Papillons like, well, let's hear what the dad wants to say. It says papillons like to stay indoors, my dad says. They're too little. And delicate, my mom says. What about one of these dogs? Look at these big dogs. That's a golden retriever, and there's a German shepherd, and a Great Dane. Ah, that's silly. So those are big dogs, but no, Fancy Nancy wanted a fancy little dog. I shake my head. Too big, those dogs are too brown, too plain. Sometimes it's hard being the only fancy person in a family. Then, Bella, Tom, please. Then Fancy Nancy gets a stupendous idea, and the idea is spectacular, which is a fancy word for great. We can get to puppy sit for Jewel. My parents say okay, and so does Mrs. Divine. My family will see how happy we'll be with a papillon puppy. I introduced Jewel to my doll, Maribel. See, there's Nancy, and there's her doll, right there. Look, there's the little dog sniffing the doll. I show my sister how to groom Jewel. Look, she's blowing a hairdryer at her. And how to scoop up her dog poop. But look, Nancy's smiling.
That's amazing.
My sister wants to hold and kiss Jewel. I tell her, you must be gentle.
Ben and Chester. Ben.
Stop. Okay, let's give that back. Put that in your head, please.
Yeah.
I tell her you must be gentle. And what a responsible girl you are, my mom says. Some dog is going to be very lucky. Bella, pay attention, okay? Two of my friends come walking their dogs. Come over to my house, I say. I'm puppy sitting, and all the dogs can play together. Hey, Bella, do you remember the dog's name? Right, that's right. Rusty splashes in the wading pool, and Jewel hides behind my duck. Scamp plays fetch. Go, Jewel, go! But she just hides behind Fancy Nancy's legs. She gets exhausted pretty quickly, and I tell my friends that she's tired. Sit down, please. While Jewel gets beauty rest, we have refreshments. Let me have it. Okay? Let me leave it there. No, we'll leave it for now. Okay, let's practice paying attention. Oh no, look what my sister is doing. Jewel is terrified. There's a dog on all the different pillows. Uh-oh. Mom, come quick. Jewel is going to be sick. And the dog spit up right on Fancy Nancy. Oh, and Fancy Nancy's sister runs away crying. Okay, sit down. Okay, sit down now.
Why is he
Okay, let's
telling the
practice.
mom?
Well, because she's a